Welcome on in, everybody. Those of you who have tuned in, we're so happy to see you. A quick little spoiler warning: if you have not gone and watched any of the games from the regular season, go and check those out. We are discussing the results.
Mm-hmm.
So, final chance. Go watch the games first, come back. We'll wait for you. No? You still here?
All
You
right.
sure? Okay. Well, in that case, I am Chris Moriarty Marks, joining Caleb the Seagull Gully here today to recap the regular season for y'all. I'm doing great. Caleb, how are you doing?
Hey, we're doing all right, man. Get to break down the season again, and that's always a good time. Draft was fun. Now we get to see the results.
Now we get to see the results, and there are quite a number of results to discuss. So why don't we just get right on into it? Is
Let's
what you
do it.
came for anyway, folks. Let's take a look at that Triple A roster. Caleb, take it away.
Yep. From the Austin Air Aces, their final roster of the season ended up being from Tier 1, a Comfy. Tier 1, Heatran. Tier 1, a Rillaboom and Urshifu Rapid Strike. Tier 2, Clefairy. Tier 2 as well is Excadrill, Meowscarada, and Pincurchin. Tier 3 is an Abomasnow, Dusk Nor, a Hitmonlee, and a Volbeat. And the restricted from draft night picked up late in the draft, that Zekrom, it made it all the way through. We got a couple stats up here, Chris. I'll let you take it over.
Yeah, a couple of season stats here. Finished eighth of eight, not ideal, but did manage to pick up 5 points in that process. Match record of 1-8, game score of 3-16, and a differential of -38.
Mm.
Uh, but there is an upside to that. There is a but. That came with it was closer than it looked, really. Uh, Caleb, why don't you run us through these stats up here at the top?
Yeah, we got a couple close series in general. Up against the top three, might not have been the best. 2-0 sweeps across the board. Number one, number two teams, -7, -6. So it's a little rough. But against the third overall team, the Memphis Machamps, it was a sweep, but it was a -3 differential. Statistically, it's a -4 is what the league usually sees in a sweep, so that's a little bit better. But more importantly, the teams that finished right above them at sixth and seventh, the Chapel Haluchas and the Windy City Whimscots, we saw a 2-1 loss and a 2-0 sweep. So both of those are big because those are where the points came from for this team. And overall, anytime you can get points, I think that's always a positive for a squad.
Yeah, can't agree more. But how did you grade this team at the end of the
Yeah.
season?
So my grade for the season was a C minus. We gave them the nickname the Idealist going into the season. Obviously, it didn't go the ideal way. I mean, in the draft, we saw that they took a couple really strong tier ones, and unfortunately, it just kind of fell flat. And I think part of that is because when you're dealing with a higher, I guess, tier list that's going on for the draft in general. Sometimes you go a strong tier one core, you have to play to I think a different level to make up for something like a Zekrom. Uh, and overall, it just didn't work out their way, but they were able to try out some fun strategies, like the weakness policy Zekrom that we saw with the Comfy. And that was kind of cool because we saw it into a Groudon team, and it actually had success. It was part of that 2-1 loss to get their first point of the season. So overall, they tried a couple things. Some things worked, some things didn't, and it's a little bit of a learning process. But they're still a new team, so I think it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve regardless.
Yeah, I pretty similarly. I gave a final score of C. Originally had this as an A minus. Called them the Rogue. They definitely went rogue in the season a little bit, but overall, it just didn't work. That was always going to be the risk when you drafted something like this, and the amount of prep and effort that it needs to go in to make one of these more niche strategies like this work wasn't really there. There were signs of life. I don't think you can just write this team off going forward into playoffs. In particular, depending on how the result of the upper bracket goes, who they might see in the lower bracket, I think might give you more or less hope going forward. But I definitely think they can still try and make a run through the lower bracket. But overall, just not the result you were hoping for uh, at the end of the day.
Go ahead and move on to our next team, the Chapo Haluchas. Uh, Chris, this team saw a lot of turnover. So this final roster, what was it?
Yeah. You may notice that this does not look like the original roster in a lot of places, but it is a Porygon 2, a Reggie Steel, a Primarina, and a Raging Bolt as the set of tier 1s. From tier 2, there's a Regice, a Funky Monkey Dory, more monkeys, it's Grafaiai, and a Salamence. And from tier 3, it's Big Man Blastoise, Big Mama Honchkrow, Scrafty, and a Weirdeer. And you may notice that that is neither a Groudon nor a Koraidon in the restricted slot. That's actually a Calyrex Ice Rider. Caleb,
Yeah.
the stats.
The stats would say this team finished 6th overall. They got the 6th seed, which is kind of a big deal. That means they made the upper bracket. We'll go into that a little bit later. With 13 points, match record of 3 wins, 6 losses, a game score of 9 wins, 14 losses, and a differential of -8. Uh, Looking at this overall team graphic, you had this made out and it's kind of fun. This whole love it or list it. We got a whole lot of Pokemon here from that made the squad, that didn't make the squad. What happened?
Most of them didn't make it. Yeah, there's a lot of scratched out Pokemon. There were 10 moves overall. And despite the way the graphic is lined out, the Iron Tread slot is actually Indeedee and Ditto, who both then got dropped, and that became Porygon. It was straight from Gouging Fire to Registeel. Third restricted for this roster is crazy. The Koraidon and Groudon both didn't work out. As you can see there towards the end, the two Sun components, the Chlorophyll users, got cut when they switched away from Sun. Ninetales went with it, and Gastrodon never saw the field, so I think we all saw that one coming. But lots of interesting upgrades. In terms of the season overall, I ended up giving this roster a B minus. Um, there was a lot of turnover, and that turnover led to this team finishing below where we expected the original roster to finish. So I think that's always something you've kind of got to weigh in. It felt like they never really landed on an identity. It was kind of Sun-ish at the start, slowly moved away from that, then hard moved away from it. If you're doing all these overhauls, it's always going to be kind of hard to find a home somewhere. Uh, but it makes sense on paper. Are they going to be able to make it work on cart is the question. Their first playoff series is going to tell us a lot. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, so this team, it fell with a B minus for me. And you already know this stat because you set this record, but the Capital Aluchas did tie the league record of 10 roster moves in a season, hence all these X'd out Pokemon. Uh, but because of those roster moves, this team had a lot of ups and downs throughout the season. And I think the big part of it was hard to find consistency when you have a lot of rotating pieces. Early on in the season, the first 5 weeks, they were 3 match wins, 2 match losses, and a lot of the rosters stayed relatively the same as they were trying to figure out what worked on the main roster. After they started making the roster moves, I think it kind of destabilized the overall team comp. Obviously, when you're moving out, 2 to 3 Pokemon a week, that's really tough to do as a coach. Um, and learning how they use these Pokemon makes a big difference too. And part of that's why they had, the skid going into the last half of the season, where they ended up finishing 3-6, which means they lost 4 matches in a row. Uh, but the good news is they got all these Pokemon played and they learned a thing or two about how this roster works. And going into the postseason, like that's where this X Factor mentality and this X Factor coach that you already brought up comes into play. We'll see kind of what they can do. And that 6th seed means they got the extra life in the postseason. And I think when you've had this much turnover, that extra mulligan can make a big difference on what kind of run they can make. Uh, and so it's gonna be really fun seeing how they handle the Memphis Machamps week first round.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for if this roster's been turning over the whole time, you get that one sort of rest week at the end of the season before we go in. That's a little extra time to figure this out, and your opponents haven't really seen what you can do
Hmm.
because you've been having to figure out the usage, how to get all that done in the final few weeks while trying to get your positioning right. And so now the training weights are off. No, nothing's holding you back other than the baseline team building rules. So we're gonna really get to see what they can do with this new evolved roster. And I think that is going to be very fun, like you said, in that first round playoff versus Memphis. Uh, but with that, let's not spend too much time on one team. Let's get on over to those Memphis Machamps that we were
Yeah,
just talking about.
we'll get to see their opponent first round. The Memphis Champs, they from tier one had a Excalibur, Incineroar, Amoonguss, and a Mousehold. Tier two, they brought in a Sableye, Milotic, Sandy Shocks, and a Scizor. Tier 3 was the Electros, Flamigo, Hydrapple, and Yanmega. And then they had their ever present and probably favorite restricted, I think, for them, just in general, the Zacian, their second restricted season using it. So they had some stats, Chris. Walk us through them.
They had some stats. They finished as the third overall seed at the last possible second, clutching up to get there. More on that later. Uh, Points 23 overall. Uh, right shy of that mark that I think we sales pitched in the opening video about 24 being that threshold for top two. Just shy of it. Turns out we were pretty close. Match record of 6-3, game score of 12-9, and a +5 differential. You love to see that.
Absolutely. Any positive differential is always a good sign of a season, honestly, in general. And part of that is the puppy in that they trusted in. You broke down the stats here with the Zacian. You've actually used Zacian, so I think you could understand why this was so strong. It played in 17 out of the 17 games that they've played in following week one. They didn't play it in week one. I'm not sure why, but they didn't. I was okay with that. They did have 24 KOs, which was the league leader, and 3 match MVPs, which is pretty big honor considering that's an overall breakdown of the series. And the fact that they picked it up 3 separate times says how versatile or how strong this Zacian was all season long. We can talk about the grades here, and I did give this an A, and mainly because this is one of those seasons that was quietly really good. It was a solid regular season. I had them as the reigning champ as the nickname because, well, quite frankly, the reigning is champ, and they had the Zacian crowned, and they had the King Gambit at the beginning, and a bunch of really corny crown stuff. And let's be honest, it was a bad nickname. But the big thing was is they were collecting wins and not really putting up, they were putting up solid performances. They were hanging in there, hanging tough, being a tough team week in and week out. And that gave them a spot to finally make a run. And ultimately that's what they did with three big sweeps to finish the season. And that got them to that 23-point mark to get the third overall seed, which honestly should have them primed to make a run. They've been playing good Pokemon, and when you're playing good going at the end of the season, going into postseason, you have to like your chances of what you can do moving forward.
Yeah, I originally had this team at a B plus, upgraded it to an A at the end of the season. I called them the dark horse, and we love it when we get one right.
Absolutely.
We didn't get the grade quite right. We were super close. We were 100% correct about the dark horse, though. This team rode the line of upper half team and made sure to consistently keep themselves in the argument and just kind of quietly tucked in. They weren't blowing people out of the water. It wasn't like they were just stomping games. It was really nice, really controlled games, finishing people off when they got in position to do so, and just getting it done.
Hmm.
And this team looks like they are in a position to try and make that title defense run. The roster still has a lot of those same weaknesses that we were complaining about originally, so there are still some exploitable parts of this. I think their first playoff matchup is going to be the first thing that really tells us if they are in title defense form or if they're gonna have to find another gear to get it done.
Yeah. Well, and this is the team, like, I think they can find that gear at one point or another because they start off in the top half of the bracket, which we'll look at in a little bit later. That does give them that time to kind of fill out what these postseason teams look like because regular season and postseason don't always look the exact same. Uh, for teams across the season. I mean, teams might be ready for Zacian, so somebody else might step up, or they have the checkmate. You just never know, and that's what makes postseason Pokemon quite a bit of fun.
Yeah. And speaking of postseason and upper bracket runs and all of
Hmm.
those sorts of things, why don't we take a look at the Nashville Ninetales?
Yeah.
Another roster that has seen a decent bit of turnover here. Coming in tier 1, we see the Dondozo, the Cresselia, the Fluttermane, and the big nasty Ursaluna. In tier 2, we've got the Tatsugiri, the Mienshao, the staple face of the Ninetales, the Alolan variant, the Kilowattrel, an interesting pickup. In tier 3, it's Alchemy, it's Bastiodon. That is not Magmortar, and it is not a typo. That is a Magmar. And Spiritomb rounds it out, and the restricted, despite several threats, did remain Terapagos all season.
Turtle stayed. And the Turtle helped lead this team to the 4th overall seed with 20 total points, a match record of 5 wins, 4 losses, game score record of 11 wins, 9 losses, and a differential of +4. And I'll be honest, Chris, when I brought up the whole big nasty Ninetales, I was kind of like, hey man, this was a really strong team on paper. I'm so glad they fully embraced it. And you see these big 3 Pokemon on this page. You looked into the research and stats here. Let's see how big and nasty these guys are.
Yeah, so taking a look at it, Dondozo, a late addition to the team, only 4 uses, still found 11 KOs, an astonishing number. Then the Ursaluna, only seeing a couple more uses, picked up 18.
It's
And then a much
insane.
more reasonable Terapagos at 15 uses, still picking up 14 KOs for a combined total of 43 KOs out of the team's entire total of 53. The 10 remaining Pokemon accounted for 10 KOs in total, and I'm pretty sure Cresselia had 3, and Fluttermane of all Pokemon had like 1 or 2 KOs. So just a mind-boggling set of powerhouses in terms of who's actually getting out there and finishing things off for this team. I originally had this team dubbed the Wall.
Yep.
Love getting one right. That's exactly what happened. They walled people out pretty consistently. Upgraded from an A minus to an A for me. Um, you know, they did what it said on the box, right? There's big, bulky, problematic Pokemon that will run their opponents out of damage if you don't just blow their stuff out of the water. Teams that weren't prepared got blown out of the water. When Nashville wasn't prepared, you could, in theory, blow them out of the water. We did see it. I'm sure you'll bring that up in your spiel as you love to do. But yeah, I mean, they blew people out, they walled people down, they did everything that this team is potentially able to do. Saw the experimentation come out. Most of the time, it worked. Got you the 4th place finish. Not much to complain about there.
No, solid season overall. And that's where my A minus came into play. But they were the big nasty Ninetales, and I know Ali really leaned into that nickname and really lived up to it, honestly. They obviously embraced it further. They picked up the Tatsugiri and Dondozo just to make something that much stronger on the field. Uh, And honestly, when they picked up those 2 about 2/3 of the way into the season, they went on a massive hot streak where they from weeks 5 to 8, where they won every single one of those matches, and they were all sweeps. So they went from a 1-3 match record to a 5-3 match record, and that was the run that really separated them from the pack that was formed in the middle, where everybody was just like 1 or 2 points or matched up with the same point total, and so finding a way to break out of that basically group of 6 other teams was the difference for him. And in that hot streak, we saw a solid game plan from the Ninetales. They executed a solid game plan, and while not may not have always been the speediest, they did close out wins. And honestly, like you said, they could be really dominant. Like those Dondozo games, like they just walked all over their opponent, unfortunately. And like we saw the timer come up and it didn't phase Nashville. They were happy to keep just pounding away at them. And so that makes it interesting because like when we get to the postseason, like will that continue to work for them? Like teams adapt, teams might be able to counter that a little easier, and teams also do a little bit more prep. So that's gonna be something fun to watch.
Yeah, I think Nashville's in for a pretty decently solid run. There's gonna be a lot of questions, but you've got to feel like this roster has a lot of answers.
Mhm.
There is some shared weakness in these big bulky monsters, but there is the ability to terrastalize for the Dondozo and the Ursaluna. There is a good enough supporting roster here, as they proved in the regular season, to try and get it done. It's just a question about, is their opponent going to be able to deal with it? I think we know that Nashville is good. Nashville is consistent. They are going to be a problem. Can their opponent take them out?
Okay.
Walking away on draft night, I said that this felt like a top 4 roster. 4th place finish seems pretty fair for this roster. They finished 4th in the regular season, and I think 4th is probably the worst we can expect from this roster going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment. I mean, they're also one of the veteran teams in the league, so you like to think that they're going to be able to do what they've done in the past and figure out how to make a run. But speaking of teams that aren't maybe a veteran but might be newer, we have the Queen City Quagsires here, bringing in the Brute Bonnet from Tier One, a Iron Hands, and a Ting Lu, and a Tornadus Incarnate form. From Tier 2, they had an Hisuian Arcanine, a Bronzong, a Pelipper, and a Sneasler from the Hisui region. Then they had their ever-present Tier 3 Bromblegast, which I think I might have got that a little bit wrong, but it was a favorite across the league to see. There
Rumblegast.
you go. Thank you.
Game 2
And
is
then the
for Rumblegast.
Empoleon, Blaziken, and a Rabsca. And the restricted that they picked up early in the draft was the Moriarty. So this team has quite a few different power hitters on the squad. Chris, we got a couple stats up there. I'll let you take it
Yeah.
away.
First stat, no roster moves. This is the
Oh,
OGs.
really?
Yeah.
That's
And
easy graphic.
then, yeah, nice and easy. They did grab 5th place, which is
They
why they're
did.
playing Nashville. More on the bracket later. But managed to snag 15 points, highly respectable. 3-6 match record. But as we saw earlier, 3-6 getting Chapel Hill 13 points, I believe. Just able to pick up those couple extra games in the game score. 9-12, doing a little bit better there. And a differential of +5, matching the Memphis Machamps, who got 3rd.
Hmm.
Impressive.
It is a big. That's huge. Anytime you can come up with positive differentials, that's a big deal. Shows you how well you played and how good your wins were. Uh, and I think +5 with a 3-6 match record might be a first we've seen there too. I have to do a little bit of stat checking, but solid season overall by the Queen City Quagsires. Moving forward, when it works, it works. All right. We saw in their wins against the Austin Air Laces, Chapel Hill Luchas, and the Nashville Ninetales big sweeps with differentials at 4 or higher. And those numbers at +7 and +8, which a +8 2-0 sweep, that's a perfect series. And within that series, the Queen City Quagsires pulled off what we call an immaculate game, which you're the only other coach that we found out has actually done that. Would you care to break that down for the viewers at home?
Yeah, Immaculate Game is when you not only win without losing a Pokemon, it's when you win a game without taking any damage.
That's insane.
So incredibly rare, even more impressive to do in a restricted meta when the Terapagos was playing. So Maridon said Choice Specs Electro Drift Go Burr, and Nashville said, yeah, I do. But
Yeah,
taking a
dude.
look at the losses, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, right? You see this 1-2 loss with the 2 differential to the Windy City Whimsicots, the 0-2 sweep, but kept it to a -2 differential against the Toronto Trick Rumors. Got swept by Memphis, but kept it to 4. Got swept by Nashville in the first game, kept it to 4, and going up against the West Texas Wingulls
Woo.
twice, and those being 2-1 losses with a -1 differential both times is incredible. I believe that is either the closest anybody played them or tied for it. Uh, so genuinely impressive work. When it works, it works. When it doesn't, sometimes it still kind of works. Those were really close games and some
Hmm.
clutch moments. I ended up giving this roster and their season a B. Originally, I called them the contender and gave them an A. You know, and it seems like they're definitely still working out the kinks of coaching and draft league, right? I think the roster lived up to the hype, but the prep and execution for some of the series was perhaps questionable. The team is absolutely in a position to make an exciting run in playoffs, but the first matchup, we said it a bunch. We're probably going to say it a bunch more. That the first matchup that we see out of these teams in playoffs is really going to tell us a lot about what we're looking at. But 5th seed, upper bracket, 2 lives, like their odds.
Yeah, you gotta like their odds. And that's where my whole nickname, as seen on the screen, is the wild card. And that's why this team got a B. The season for the Queen City Quagsires, I mean, they had some really impressive victories. We've already highlighted that. They had some really extremely close defeats. Already highlighted on that. But in those series, they had some dominant adjustments that we saw, especially in Game 2 with the Tornadus and the Bramblegast. I saw that twice, and it dominated me both Game 2s. And they also had a couple ones, like if we look at your 0-2 or your 2-0 win or their 0-2 loss, there was a series there that they might have snatched a defeat from the jaws of victory with some snarl stuff going on into a Calyrex. I think you even call it out on stream, like, hey, I think we might have stole one. And so sometimes, it just didn't work out, I guess. And so they found ways to win, but they also, they were growing. And I think Queen City, they're still growing as a team. And that's actually, I think, what makes them the wild card, but also makes them the contender at the same time. Because depending on what you get right off the bat and how they adjust in the series will really determine what kind of team you're going to face. That game, too, I think, for Queen City and a lot of these series really dictates how they're going to play and their confidence moving forward. And Brambleghast was that Pokemon that got that spark form more often than not. I'm going to be looking forward to seeing if that's going to be what helps them kind of stabilize and get comfortable when they start playing these best of fives. And they get to play the Nashville Ninetales again, who they just played in week 9. And they had to sweep that to get them into this 5th spot. And they were able to clutch it up. And so that's going to be fun to see how that plays out.
Speaking of how things played out, elephant in the room time. Let's start talking about our own teams.
Oh, baby.
Taking it to the Toronto Trick Rumors. Taking a look at this year roster. I'm going to see if I can do it from memory.
Oh, here we go.
The screen. Iron Valiant. It's Ogerpon Hearthflame variant. Urshifu Single Strike variant. Walking Wake. Farigiraf. Murkrow. Tinkaton. Wo-Chien. And from Tier 3, Barraskewda, Flygon, Luxray, and Illumise. And of course, you can't fall off the horse if you don't have one to ride. The restricted was Cali Shadow the whole time. Talk to me about my stats, Caleb.
Oh, man, you
How'd I
just
do?
want to hear them. You just want to see these beautiful numbers being read off the page. The season stats for the Toronto Trickmers are as follows. They finished as the number 2 seed, second seed in the draft league, which is, pretty solid. That also means I got a postseason bye, which we'll obviously look at that when we look at the bracket. They did finish with 25 points out of a potential 36. I don't think we've actually talked about that, but a very high point conversion rate. Match record of 6 wins, 3 losses, and a game record of 13 wins, 6 losses, with a positive 13 differential. So, overall, a very strong season by the Toronto Trick Rumors, which is what you should expect if a team finishes second on the big table. And looking at this whole story of the TTR, there's a hot start, cold finish. Chris, you're the coach here. You played this. What happened?
Sure did. Got off to a ridiculous start, 5-0 in matches. So 10 games there. Took the first game of the 6th series versus the West Texas Wingnuts to get off to an 11-0 game start. Glad you liked that.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Yeah, so got off to run impressively enough, doing some weird stuff with the roster. We saw stuff like full bolt Calyrex during that. We saw the big Barraskewda game versus Windy City. And then, as I already alluded to, you can't fall off the horse if you don't have one, and we sure did. Finished out with a 1-3 match record and a 3-8 game score. Not ideal. Clutched up when we had to get the big sweep to make sure that we clinched the 2nd seed with a little bit of time to spare. But overall, the trend was up, if maybe not as up as we would have liked it, but it stayed up for the season.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk about your season grade first before you have to grade yourself. Give you a break here. I did give you a preseason grade, I think, of an A, postseason grade as an A. And I'm just going to put this, we're going to deal with this right now. There's a nickname here called the Prankster. That was awful. Worst nickname, I think, of the entire bunch.
Not a reigning champ's up there.
Yeah, well, I mean, this one's up there as like one of the worst ones too. Uh, but moving forward, this is a cool record this team set in this hot start. 5-0 match start, 11 to go, 11-0 game start. Neither one of those things have happened in the league, so that's a cool new like here's the new goal. Can somebody ever beat this? And that tells you how dominant it was. And I think what was cool about that is this team used, or your team, used quite a few different Pokemon to be the showcase. We saw where Calyrex did its thing. We saw games where, hey, this is a Wo-Chin, stall your whole dragon squad out. That was Chapel Hill. We saw Barraskewda take over against Kyogre and kind of surprise Windy City that way. And then you had, your really strong tier ones that are Urshifu Single Strike. You had your big Walking Wake or Woke Stepper, I think is what you like to call it most of the season. And so those all
Sure.
played a huge part on getting off to that 5-0, 11-0 start. And I think, that drop off, it's not that bad because you got the points you needed to lock up the 2 seed. Nashville had their hot run that kind of put things where, hey, that might get a little spooky, but you did what you needed to while also experimenting. And I think that helps when you get to the postseason and you have that postseason bye to maybe think up something new, maybe something to throw at whoever shows up in that round 2 matchup. And that's going to make it pretty fun. And 6 match wins, that's always respectable. So A grade from me.
And A grade for me, gave myself an A to start with, gave myself an A at the finish line. We did. When you get the second pick, you're looking at something like a second finish, especially if you're the first person to grab a restricted. You got to convert on that. And we did. Called this team the specialist. A lot of familiarity, a lot of favorites. Played to them pretty heavily. Definitely managed to spin the usages out across the roster, but this is another one that just sort of fell right in line with the predictions, right? Got off to a roaring start, lost focus, but if you offered a second place finish at the end of draft night, I'd have taken it, right? So a lot of good things going for the team. There was a lot of experimentation during the season, basically from the get go. Really limit tested the horse, as has already been alluded to, with the absolutely clutch live from the Flutter Mane. If you haven't seen that, go watch the Nashville series. The clutching up in the QCQ series. If you haven't seen that, go watch it. The horse clutched up. The rest of the team stepped up when they were asked to. We saw a lot of really inventive sets. We saw some different looks at who's actually the carry. We saw some lots of carry teams. We saw some solo carry teams. Uh, so lots of experimentation, and the results maybe not ideal, but they were definitely there. So
They
a
were
lot
there.
of good momentum to go off of looking towards playoffs, even though the last 4 series maybe didn't look the best.
Well, the postseason's always a new game. I think we've always agreed to that just across the league. But you're an old squad. We got another new squad coming up, the Windy City Whimsicots. And this was a fun team to kind of watch throughout the season, I think. From tier 1, they had a Chien Pao, a tier 2 Landers Incarnate. Tier 3, it was the Basculegion Male, and then a Roaring Moon. Then from tier 2, a Hitmontop, a Klefki, an Overquill, and a Sinistcha. Tier 3 was the Chestnut, Gardevoir, Rhydon, and Serena. And their ever present and favorite restricted, I think, is the Blue Whale, the Kyogre. Uh,
Yeah.
Chris, we got some stats here, a little bit different than what yours were, but there's the story to tell.
A little bit different. Seventh seed overall, a bit of the inverse there. 12 points is nothing to scoff at.
Mhm.
Able to pick up a couple of clutch sweeps along the way. Match record 3-6, again the inverse of the TTR one, but game score 7-13. Really managing to split that difference, almost going 1/3 of their I don't know what I'm saying. The differential was -6.
Yeah, differentials -6. Uh, I think the big story that you and I we've discussed this team, a handful of times because on paper we both agreed this was like an A grade. But the big story I think was the top half falling short. I mean, Kyogre in wins, 7 uses, 9 KOs, 3 feints. Chien Pao, 5 uses, 9 KOs, 2 feints. Those look pretty good. The losses for Kyogre, unfortunately, did rack up. There were 12 uses and losses, 14 KOs, 11 feints. I think the big difference anybody can see there is the feints going from 3 to 11 between wins and losses. And then Chien Pao with 4 uses, 3 KOs, 4 feints. So not getting as many KOs in that scenario doesn't help out. And then the other two tier ones, Chris, I'll let you break those down because you know those a little bit better than I do.
Well, I mean, taking a look at them, it's the same story, right? You look at the wins for Landorus, 2 uses, 3 KOs, no feints. You look at the losses, 2 uses, 1 KO, 2 feints. Roaring Moon was oftentimes used as a bit more supportive than offensive, but still, there were 5 uses, 4 KOs, 3 feints in the wins. And if you look at the losses, 7 uses, 2 KOs, 7 feints. And you may notice that's only 3 of the tier ones. Basculegion is not here because it did not participate in a win.
That's rough. I didn't know that.
So that is pretty rough, and I think we kind of were reminded of a lesson that we've learned the hard way before, and that is the team can look good on paper, but the games are played on cartridge. It
Yeah.
really, you know, I labeled this team as the brute. They had some big sweeps, but most of the time they were the ones getting brutalized. It just felt like this team got off to a solid start every single game almost, and then it just walked away from them, earning them a B- from me. It doesn't feel like it was necessarily just like the coach themselves isn't necessarily the problem, right? The piloting was fine. I don't think the roster was the problem. Maybe Basque Legion. I'll die on that hill. But I think the problem really came down, in my eyes, to the prep. They walked in with a good idea. They knew how they wanted to start. No idea how to finish. And so I think there's still a lot of hope for this team because we're sitting here talking about it still looks good on paper, right?
Mhm.
The only switch that they made was from a Jolteon to a Gardevoir. I think we all consider that an upgrade in this roster. And so it looks good. You can still go do some really good stuff, but you're going to have to do it from the bottom bracket, and the prep is going to have to step up. You can do good, but you've got to figure out how to finish the games and the series,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yep, that's a big point to this series or to the season. I think is just how to finish, and you might have been a little bit nicer than I gave this a C plus. And I think if you're looking at maybe the expectations, it might be a little disappointed with how it turned out, just because seventh I don't think is where they were expecting to be. I think after draft night they were probably looking at a top two, just because this team looks stacked on paper. Uh, and when things worked for this squad, I mean, they look like the team we hopped them up to be. They also were starting to clutch up towards the end. They got 2 huge sweeps against Memphis and Toronto to help keep that upper bracket hopes alive. Unfortunately, they also got swept by those two teams, and so inconsistency against the top three, especially those two, I think kind of did showcase, the struggles that the team may have had. It was either sweep or be swept. And, they look dominant when they do get their sweeps. And so I think this team has the tools to make a run. I mean, they're talking about getting the playoff buff, and I think they're going to put in the time to make this work because, I mean, this team has everything it needs to make a run. I still stand by that. And the Blue Well and Company, if they're on that win side of this, top half falling short graphic, those numbers look amazing. They're got a Landers that never fainted. They have a Kyogre that has a 3-to-1 KD ratio, and then 4.5 KD ratio on the Pao. So I mean, they're getting excellent value out of their tier ones, and if they can come up with a consistent game plan that can work in a best of five, that can handle that overall stress, like I think this roster can do it. They just have a really uphill battle because they have to come from the bottom half all the way through.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about that blue whale. It seems like it finally clicked in the very last series that they were playing. They
Mhm.
brought Kyogre not only to every match, but to every single game except their very last one of the regular season. And I think that's one thing that every other roster kind of did well. Even, Memphis learned their lesson of we need it by trying to not use it. Windy City didn't really get the chance to explore what does my team look like if we leave the Kyogre at home. Maybe the Kyogre is handing over the advantage my opponents need here, and I'm getting punished. Didn't really explore that space, and so that's something with one bracket life to your name is going to be a bit of a thing you've got to really struggle with. Is the Kyogre? Do I need the stats, or is this what's hurting me? It's going to be tough. But
Yep.
speaking of tough, you want to know something that was tough? Beating the West Texas Wingles this
Oh
season.
yeah. It's
Uh,
just a Route 103 bird. Nothing to worry about here.
Nothing to worry about here except this giant pile of Pokemon here. I forget if I'm supposed to read these or you, but I'm gonna do it.
Go for it.
So that's a Chi-Yu in Tier 1, not on Toronto, sad. Dragonite, a Whimsicott, and Ogerpon Cornerstone. Coming in Tier 2, we got Hariyama, Magnezone, Tauros, and Volcarona. Can't lose to it if it's on your team. And in Tier 3, we've got the Clefable, Donphan, the Muck Alola, and the Salazzle. And Lunala made it the whole way if they went undefeated. Walk me through those stats, bud.
Well, it was the
Sing your
first overall
praises.
seed, which I guess is what you expect if you go undefeated, right? 31, 31 points out of 36, which I mean, that's excellent in my opinion. 9-0 match record, quite frankly, was not something I expected to do. And a game record of 18 wins, 5 losses with a plus 32 differential, which, believe it or not, is still short of the differential record set by Chapel Hill at 35. So while it was still a very good season, that could be improved. So this team, I don't know, man.
Yeah. I mean, you were only one game loss away from,
Yeah.
tying Toronto stats there, but I think there's an elephant in the there's a Don fan. That's not really what I'm
Oh, I
talking
love
about. But
Don
you
Fan.
won with what? You won with huh? So not
Yeah.
only was all this winning happening, the West Texas Wingles were busting out some absolutely silly strategies to do it with, absolutely abusing the win cushion that they had. Looking here, we had the Dragon Cheer Salazzle, full crit, E-Speed Dragonite, the stuff people dream up when they're talking about goofy VGC strategies.
Uh,
There was an Iron Defense Body Press Magnezone that just bullied a Calyrex Ice Rider. Uh, got frozen and deserved it, but I'll let you take the middle one.
well, the middle one is a Lunala with safety goggles with Terrafire. This one was up against, I believe, a Groudon team from Chapel Hill. Actually, two of these Pokemon on here are up against Chapel Hill. I think I owe them up an apology. But
I think we both do.
they had a Groudon squad, and I honestly was like, with your assistance, you're like, you want to do something stupid? They have a Ditto. Let's give them nothing that they can use into your team, and they copy this. And we did get a great clip from John in their stream about that. But the whole idea was to use the sun against them. And they never had the Groudon on the team. So it was just kind of like, what do you do with Lunala? But, we still gave it a shot. And we did get a funny copy and let other Pokemon take it away. But it was it was a little bit goofy and it worked and it shouldn't have. And I think that's the big problem that that happened with a lot of these stupid sets. Uh,
Yeah. Well,
so
I mean, it worked, right? If you go undefeated, you kind of have to give that an A plus, which is what I gave. And I'm just gonna read what I've got written over here for this one. It was textbook. It was right out of the textbook. Controlled games, check. Stompy games, check. Creative sets, which we've already discussed, that's on the checkbox. Using the classics and the standards, you did manage to do that. I'm not sure where, but I do believe it happened. This team went out and just got the job done week after week. It wasn't always easy, but I think that's what made it all the more impressive. It was a marshal on the battlefield making the right calls to win, and the troops came up clutch when they needed to. This team is looking to be in title winning form, the roster, and the coach. Can they survive with the target on their back? Is going to be the question. In playoffs, you're going to get the best of what people have to offer. But when you go undefeated, you know that every team knows that 110% has to start in prep against you, and that is what's going to be scary. But if you can win with some of this nonsense and you're going to cut that out for playoffs, good lord, that's horrifying. Good luck, everybody that has to play you. Stay away from me, please.
Well, I appreciate the flattering words, but I did give this an A plus as well because I don't really know what else you give a season like this. So I will agree with you there. But quite frankly, with you, I didn't expect this team to go undefeated. Just because it was a team that required, I think, a lot of cohesiveness to work together. And it was a lot of stuff that, I hadn't used Chia before. Dragonite was foreign to me as well. Ogerpon Cornerstone, actually, I think Whimsicott's the only Pokemon I vaguely knew how to use. And so the fact that they went undefeated, and this being the first undefeated regular season in a WW PDL, is pretty awesome. I mean, we did play 2 game sets in season 4, but that had ties, so I don't think that quite counts. Which I think you're happy to say season 4 doesn't count. Uh,
Always love saying it.
and so, but the big story on this for me, I think, was it was a lot of fun to play. And obviously, winning doesn't hurt, but when you do get to do these silly sets with full crit, E-Speed Dragonite, it helped that we're against QCQ, who's also being a little creative with stored power shenanigans, trying to boost their defense, and it just didn't matter. So we kind of got lucky in the matchup there. Um,
Nah,
but
sorry.
trying those things, testing the waters. I mean, it was fun. Just get to try a couple things, and we had some bad luck, but we rolled with it. And at the end of the day, when we needed a Pokemon the shine and take over in the spotlight, we were able to get that. Whimsicott wanted to be the carry, I think, every week if it was on the team. So it came up
Two
with a couple big
back-to-back
KOs,
insane
and so
punches.
we were happy with that for that cotton ball. And I think my big question for myself is, can we keep this balanced side of here's something silly or creative and also like a good team build at the same time? If I can do that, I mean, I'll be happy with whatever the postseason run comes out to be. But quite frankly, I would love to win again, but I don't think anybody else does want that to happen.
Nah,
So,
you no too many stars. Yeah, stop.
but
You have enough
it was a fun
trophies.
run. So,
My turn. We got to tie again.
yeah, yeah, that's
Uh,
fair.
well, with that, let's put it all in context. Let's take all of these. We've kind of hit on where everybody is and what all their numbers are, but let's put it in a big old stack so everybody can see it and take a
Yep.
look at that table. Uh, Taking a look at it here, it's all the stuff you've already seen. Nothing really new, but to put it in perspective, a lot of this is kind of a bit closer than I think, maybe at the start of the season we were expecting, right? I know when we were talking about like, oh, 36 is the maximum points. 24 is going to be like a big score. Like if you can get 24 points, that's going to be mass. And there's
Yeah.
31.
Well,
Absolutely shut that out. 25, 23 right there, just absolutely edging it, teasing it, just really just right on the edging. Anyway,
Well, that is what
uh,
Memphis likes to do, right? They like the edge, I think.
well, that's the thing that's on the internet now.
Yep. Well, how many jokes have they made? But they have been teetering
Yeah,
on the edge there.
yeah. And you look at some of these game scores in particular. I mean, or even the match records, right? You see second and third tied at 6 and 3. That cluster of ties for 3 and 6 down there at the upper bottom. But 18 and 5, 13 and 6, missing out on 5 more game wins, but only 1 game loss behind first place is pretty impressive.
Hmm.
The difference between third and fourth, a 12 and 9 and 11 and 9, right? 9 and 12, 9 and 14. The margins were so thin, and I think it's a beauty of the scoring system
Yes.
that these tiny little margins can have such drastic implications. Where you get those wins matters. The difference between a sweep and picking up those points in a bunch of little places is apparent. It worked.
Mhm.
Good system, everybody. High five to
Yeah.
the staff.
I think overall as a staff, the 5 of us that did this, that mathed this out, because we went from a division style format for like the past 5 seasons to, or no longer than that. We've played divisions for a long time. But with restricteds, we didn't want to worry about, I have to counterpick this restricted or whatever. It came down to be how do you reward sweeps? And then how do you reward like actually playing into a bad restricted matchup? And so the point system spelt out is you get 4 points for a sweep, 3 points for a 2-1 win. And then if you do happen to lose but pick up a game, you do get 1 point. And if you do get swept, unfortunately, you get nothing. But the whole beauty, I think, that really happened within this scoring system was those one win, two loss sets. Because that's where the difference between 15, 13, and 12 is right now. They're all 3 and
Mhm.
6. The difference is when Queen City won, they got a sweep, but they also picked up, or they got two sweeps, and they picked up those couple extra games to get that 2 game or 2 point lead over Chapel Hill. And Chapel Hill got 13 points because they did pick up that one game win in our week 9 matchup where they did get the frozen Magna Zone, and that one game win meant that Windy City had to win their matchup to jump them because of head to head stuff. And so that, those little bitty points, not big in the moment, but at the grand scheme of things, after 9 weeks of play, those really came down to breaking ties more so than even head to head matchups. And so that was kind of fun to see just how that shook out, and just also just finding ways to win. And we wanted to reward winning, and I think this format actually did that.
Well, and speaking of rewarding winning, let's stay here on the table for a second, but let's talk
Yeah.
about that format, right? What people were fighting for. What you were not fighting for is finishing a bottom two. The
Yep.
format leading into the playoffs is an upper lower bracket variable life system, is what we've called it. If you finish seventh or eighth, as Windy City and the Austin Area Laces did, you are seeded into the lower bracket with one tournament life. If you lose, you are done. The next four teams, going third through sixth, are seeded into the upper bracket, getting two tournament lives. If you lose, that's okay. You get one more before you're eliminated, and they play 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5.
Right.
The top two teams get to start in the upper bracket. High five us. Boom.
Woohoo.
And not only do they get to start in the upper bracket with two lives, they get a bye from the first round of upper bracket playoffs, meaning that they kind of almost have really a third life there. So two losses and you're out. And for anyone who does manage to win out the upper bracket, we are playing with a optional bracket reset in the final.
Yep.
If you lose the first one, you still have that extra tournament life. It becomes a best of 10.
Yeah.
You can opt out of it if you are the person there and you're like, no, they have me. I'm not even going to try, which would be weird, but we're leaving people that option because 10 games of Pokemon is a lot.
It is.
But huge advantage for going upper bracket and winning the upper bracket, and those top two seeds have a solid advantage. Being upper
Hmm.
bracket at all is just inherently an advantage. You do not want to go lower bracket if you can avoid it. That's normally true, even more so when there's that upper
Right.
bracket reset. So let's take a look at the bracket.
Yeah.
Walk me through
Well,
it.
something that was interesting is you see Windy City at that seventh place spot and Chapo at that sixth. The very last game of the regular season was determining on how this whole top bracket looked. And I think the whole season had a lot of drama in general. And because of that, Memphis got a big crit that swept Windy City, which kept them in the seventh place spot. And that eighth place spot was the Austin Air Laces. So they're awaiting either the losers of the fourth, fifth game, which is Nashville Ninetales, Queen City Quagsires. Loser of that goes and plays the Windy City Whimscots, and the winner of that goes on to play the West Texas Wingles. On the third place and the sixth place game, the loser will play the Austin Air Laces, and the winner will go on to play the Toronto Trick Roomers. So, a lot to play for, I think, on a lot of these teams and just kind of what these paths would look like. Uh, I don't think there's really like a good path ideally that you could get. But even as the eighth seed, we hadn't talked about Austin in a little bit. You know, they had a close 0-2 sweep loss to Memphis, and they did pick up their first series winning against Chapel Luchas.
Game
So
win.
They got a game win. Sorry, they did get their a sweep against Windy City Whimscots, but if they're gonna play them, they got to get all the way to the end of this lower bracket, which is it's doable. Any of these outcomes are doable. It's just how difficult is it going to be? And so, as the eighth seed, I think you have a big task ahead of you. But getting either Memphis or Chapel Hill might be a decent draw. It's gonna be uphill just because of the restricted matchup, but your tier ones might be able to carry the load. We'll just have to find out.
Yeah, and if you're Windy City, Nashville's a scary team, but the answer to them has been big bursty damage, and that's kind of what your roster is
Yep.
really good at. If you can find the speed control there or prevent Nashville from getting it and just blow things up with things like Chin Pao or the Kyogre, that's not the worst matchup in the world. And we've seen how swingy Queen City can be.
Hmm.
You know, that's not the worst pool you could have gotten. I think you really don't like playing the Zacian team. I don't really think you want to go blow for blow with the Cali Ice team just because the restricteds and how reliant you've been on yours. But, you know, not the worst pools you could have gone for. And I think if you're in this upper bracket slew, big mess of I don't even know who you would want to play.
Yeah.
Um, Memphis probably kind of okay with taking the Chapel Hill that's on the downward streak. You like the idea of Zacian into Cali Ice and the new Reg Ice, and kind of just the direction that this roster has gone. How, how do you feel about this upper bracket set of matchups?
Yeah, and that bracket's kind of tough to kind of call. Honestly, I think we're going to get some pretty fun matchups. That Nashville Ninetales Queen City Quagsire series, it's if it's anything like how the regular season went, those were both sweeps and they were pretty handedly swept in either of those two directions. And so this one's going to probably be dictated on what happens in the first game, maybe the second game. And if you can't get the ship righted at that point, it's going to be really tough to come back and win that series, I think, just overall. Uh, but, I think if the winner of that probably has an okay path, just because, either of those teams have either the damage or just the sustainability on the field, I think to, wrestle with my own team, the West Texas Wingles. Uh, and if you lose that, you're playing the Windy City Whimsicots, where restricted wise, you actually have a really good matchup into Kyogre. The trick is, what do you do about the other five Pokemon slots? And, how do they bring the restricted? But I think in these postseason matches, most teams would. And so that's going to make it kind of an interesting. That fourth, fifth, I think, is going to be a team that loser there. I don't think is going to be all the way out. They do have a tough draw in the lower bracket, but I do think that fourth, fifth team, either one of those, I could see making a run. If you're just picking one from the first, four that play opening round.
Yeah, and it's rare that we see a playoff sweep, but I think if you were ever going to pick one, that's probably your best
Mhm.
bet, right? Is just one of those teams just going to show up with the right roster and roll over it, like has happened twice. And if you're Queen City Quagsires, you're the team that's played the West Texas Wingles the closest, besides
Absolutely.
maybe TTR. So looking at that as your next round matchup when TTR kind of blew you out of the water, you're probably happier on that side of the bracket, weirdly enough.
Yep.
Nashville, looking at both of these ghost type restricted, these ghost psychics with some decent dark type stuff. You've got your big normal Ursa Luna, the ability to maybe wall these out this time now that you've kind of settled on the roster. Uh, I don't think you're too sad about going to see either of these teams.
Right.
But with West Texas, maybe there's a little bit better of an angle to stall that one out than we saw the super bulked out version of TTR.
Hmm.
Uh, and if you're Memphis and Chapel Hill, I think you're pretty good to stay away from the West Texas Demon, right? You're very happy to be taking on the second place team that has shown off a lot more weaknesses, a lot more vulnerabilities if you can deal with their prankster users, whatever speed control they're going for. Especially if Chapel Hill manages to win this, big if, but if they manage
Mhm.
to upset here, we have something very funny that will happen. TTR and Chapel Hill will play, and Chapel Hill's restricted will have never been the same across 3 games. If they
Oh, that's
win,
fun.
the Toronto Trick Roomers will get to play against all 3 different restricteds that Chapel Hill have put together. And so far, those have been 2-0 sweeps in favor of Toronto. The first being the Big Lochian game, the second just being a generic team effort, get on through there. Urshifu and Ilumi's putting on a masterclass. And so now it's Cali Ice, which I don't know if you really think that's a better matchup, but it's certainly a bulkier matchup
Right.
this time and a more accurate spread move. So maybe that's the key. And so we'll see. The Zacian, I don't think you're that scared of the Cali Shadow Rider. You aren't the first time. It didn't show up anyway, so you kind of
Right.
go with that.
Yeah.
But looking at this upper bracket path forward for these two teams, I don't think they're too sad about the draw either.
Right.
I think everybody was kind of like okay with how it finally shook out.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not excited to play anybody, but
Well, and I think that speaks to the league in general. Like, I think the parity of the league has gotten so much better from the early days. Like at seasons 1, 2, and 3, I think anybody could beat anybody, but it was only 4 teams then. Once we expanded, the gap between expansion teams and just the original 4,
Legacy.
yeah, there was a gap, but that gap's long gone. Now that we're in our 14th season, I think everybody's pretty much on a even playing field, and that's what makes postseason fun. And I think that's also why we wanted to put some weight to our regular season. I think that's something everybody's kind of wanted for a little bit, and we were able to come up with a format that said, hey, you performed well in the regular season, you should get something to incentivize playing for those top 2 spots, other than maybe just a buy or just a low seed draw, because
Choosing
everybody's at
your
an equal.
opponent.
Yeah, and so that's made it, a pretty fun way to go about this, and I think it's been a success, and I think this is gonna be a fun bracket to watch. And I think something that's an interesting wrinkle that we haven't actually talked about yet is once you get to the top half, or when you're playing the winner 4-5, winner 3-6 against 1 and 2. When those series play, the loser of that actually goes to the opposite lower bracket. And so, in the case of the West Texas side, the loser of that round 2 game actually goes to where the Austin Airlace side is. And the loser of the Toronto Trick Room or 3-6 game goes to the Windy City side. And so, you're not going to play potentially the same teams every time. You might have a rematch depending on how the brackets fall out, but you will probably have to have a chance to play everybody maybe one more time. Obviously, there'll be a few eliminations before then, but having that shuffle in the lower bracket could cause a little chaos for matchups you may or may not have been prepared for, or thinking to see them later on at least.
Yeah, completely agree. And if you are interested in seeing these matchups play out, be sure to try and check these teams out on Twitch.
Oh yeah.
I believe so far we are going to see that every series is streamable if you know Memphis is the team that drops down. Maybe we'll have to figure something out for that one.
Well, we have Switch
But
2s available on some of these. We can find a way to get it out there for people to watch. Because I think the
yeah,
postseason ones are best of fives. You do see some pretty fun wrinkles with teams being
yeah,
played because you don't see the one off game very often since you have to win 3. It's a lot harder to build a team where I can still one game. I just have to win one of the next 2. No, you have to win one of the next 3 or 2 of the next 3. Uh, and so you have to build pretty well rounded compositions that I think can go the distance. And most of our series have suggested you have to win either in 4 or in 5. We don't see 3-game sweeps often at all.
yeah. But
Yep. Sorry.
go check out those games
Yeah.
when they play. With all that being said and done, I think I want to just move on to just talking about the season a bit more, right? The
Absolutely.
playoffs, we're gonna get to talk about that more because they're gonna happen. And hopefully, I believe the intent right now is for us to come back and talk to y'all once that's wrapped up. Maybe get some different faces in here. Maybe
Yeah.
do something for that. But if nothing else, somebody's gonna come talk to y'all about it. I'm sure. Uh,
I think it'll be fun at least.
but
We've had fun
but
making
I
these.
yeah, but I just want to talk about the season. Like what's some of the stuff that stuck by? Is there anything about these teams that we haven't talked about yet that you wanted to talk about? I've got an interesting stat for you to kick
All
us
right.
off if you don't have
Yeah.
something.
Oh, go for it. You got the floor, man.
So I did a little digging, and this
That's good.
stat does exclude season 4 because,
Well,
as we all know, season 4 never happened.
it's such a different
Um,
format. So,
well, it specifically ruins this stat because the stat in question is the fewest matches played per series on average,
oh, okay.
or the fewest games per match in a season on average, was actually this season, season 14. It had an average number of games per match of 2.278, which beats season five's 2.286 by a whopping 0.008. We had to get super
UND.
specific to find this. It felt like it had to be true, right? Because this is something you
Yeah.
pointed out. Every week outside of I think the first one had
Yes.
3 sweeps and one series went 2-1.
Yeah. I'm
And
only worried that stat could have been even lower, sweep wise. But I was dilly dallying from week 6 through 9. Everything went to 3 games for me. So I was the guy extending series or having series extended. But that was impressive,
Ramblegast.
honestly. I
Yeah,
think as a league, and that people saw a win condition, excluding maybe Nashville because game two is for getting silly for them, uh, as they like to say. Teams, they find out information in game one. A lot of people like to say game one is information. I think you coined that phrase. And
sure enough.
that was where teams are not just playing game one to learn, they're playing game one, learning things, adapting on the fly, and picking that game up. And then they apply that to game two, and that's how they get the sweeps. I think anytime you see these perspectives on these Twitch games, a lot of the coaches here are already thinking, okay, what is their game two adjustment when they're wrapping up game one if it's, in a spot where they can do that. Uh, and they're looking ahead and how they map out these series. And I think that's led to that crazy 2.278?
Yep.
Yeah,
2 points.
two.
You actually got it exactly
All
right.
right.
That's crazy.
2.278 game total. And I mean that's, a 2-0 plus 4 is like the average. If things go awry, we expect to see a sweep come out. And we had a lot of those totals actually exceed that. A lot of sixes and a lot of sevens on differentials in these sweeps. And that's what helped teams like, Queen City get a positive differential with the losing match record. When they won a sweep, they had a +4, +7, and a +8. Those are extremely high numbers. When typically like twos and threes might be what we see in close series.
And then when they lost, they kept it close, right?
Yeah,
Both times against West Texas was a -1 in a 3-game set.
yeah,
So,
extremely close. That's
doing a lot of good work there.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, and differential
so,
is an important stat, and to get a good differential in a league, you have to sweep. And so, and seeing 3 sweeps a week, we always want to see the most Pokemon when we're not playing, because we just love watching the games. But those sweeps and getting those extra points because differential is something we use as a tiebreaker. Uh, it's important, and we see teams actually sometimes play to that just to make sure that they have that one little extra edge when we get to these postseason matchups or seedings, and that was very true this season with how the games were shaken up in points and
oh,
just who's getting points where.
I definitely remember a couple games making a switch or just doing something to be like, I want that one extra differential point. I'm just gonna make the switch. It probably doesn't hurt to stay in here, but I don't want to give him the point. I don't want to give
Oh yeah,
anything away. So
yeah. I
that
mean,
was big.
anything to get the advantage. And But I think everybody does it in a good sports way. I don't think it's
Oh
ever
yeah,
really anything malicious. It's just
yeah.
teams are looking at ways to make sure that they're able to win a series. And if that means make this extra safe switch so I for sure lock this up, teams will do it. And very rarely does somebody ever get too silly or make a differential switch and actually bites them in the butt. I don't think that ever really happens anymore. Just because everybody's played, I think, within our league at least 3 or more seasons. Our 3 youngest teams, Windy City, Austin Area Aces, and then we've had, more expansion teams than original teams at this point. So we're the old guard, if you will, and we've had plenty of the other squads show us that you know we either got to adapt or they're going to pass us up, and that makes that kind of fun.
Absolutely. Did you find any fun stats in your digging
So
for any of this chat?
yeah, so some fun stats. I like to look at overall season breakdown stuff. Talking about an OG team, the Nashville Ninetales, they are always Mr. 500, and they have done it again. They've played 14 seasons. They have won 145 regular season games, and they've lost
Okay,
145 regular season games,
you're kidding.
which is, I don't know. I mean, that's 390, no, 290, not 390. I can't count. 290 regular season games played over 14 seasons. We've played a lot of Pokemon just looking at the Nashville Ninetales stats, and they're 145 and 145, all things balanced. I don't know how they've consistently done that. But
That is absurd.
again, they had a respectable season. They went 11-9 game score, so they, got that one extra game to get it back even. So it's like they knew. I don't know, man.
That's why they just got hard slipped in week 9. I get it
Yeah,
now.
they had to
It's for
keep
the
it
balance.
balanced.
It's
Had to
for
keep
the
it balanced.
balance.
Uh, I think that was
So
a fun
whatever
one when I
happens
was
to
looking
them
at
in the
things.
first series of playoffs, we know the inverse will happen in the next one. Got it.
That's true. I mean, postseason's a little bit different because early season we did gauntlet stuff, so they have a different
Yeah.
postseason record than regular season. But uh, they've been fun to watch. On how they just handle things in general. uh,
They're
they,
just fun to watch in general.
yeah, they're fun. They're a good vibe team. Honestly, they'll just do
Mhm.
things off vibes. I mean, they devolved Magmortar to Magmar to make the team work this season. So
Still one of the
I don't
goofier
know how
names.
they did it, but they figured it out.
Oh, well. And I mean, with that, it was kind of just a big history season in a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
ways. We saw a lot of record tying, record breaking stuff. We've already touched on some of it, right? We've got the addition of another immaculate game. We've got the 10 roster
yep,
moves. We've got the perfect season, or not perfect season, but the undefeated season. We have the first ever triple restricted season.
yeah.
That's a wonky one.
That is very wonky.
Uh, we had more games go to the timer warning. God, why
Yeah,
does this keep happening?
get a little
Um,
PTSD from there.
a lot of it. Um, but I mean, just all kinds of really, normally in a season we see one or two things happen that are like history checking worthy,
Yeah,
and maybe one or two things happen historically. But this season, just kind of a lot of people doing a lot of really cool, fun stuff, stat wise and game wise, and just in general. I think it
yeah,
was a really fun, really cool season that when we look back at this historically, we're going to come back to this one a lot,
yeah.
I imagine.
And that's what's kind of fun. I think restricted seasons are also a little bit different on how we play. Uh, and
Yeah.
that's, allows us to experiment. And I think the format helped aided to allow people to experiment to their best of ability. We did have some cool longevity records. I know you're talking about roster moves, stuff like that. Some longevity records that came into play. I know we talked about the Nashville Ninetales perfect 500 situation, but if you look at overall game record, now this is including postseason records as well as regular season. So we don't have season 9 postseason in there. But like we got Chapel Hill, they broke over 120 game wins this season, which is a big deal from a team that started from season 7, which is kind of fun to watch. Another stat dump, we saw Memphis cross the 100 game record. They're at 111 total on games won so far, which is pretty sweet. Nashville hit 200 if you factor in their postseason success. So that's pretty cool to see that as well. Um, Queen City, they're a newer team. They've only played like 6 seasons, and they've won 52 games across postseason and regular season, which is crazy. They've played 60 total matches. With whatever comes up in the postseason, so they're getting their feet wet. I think they played a handful. Uh,
Absolutely.
you're you're gonna might be blown away from this number. Your regular season has hit 160, but your overall has hit 220 game
Good
wins.
lord.
Um, and you've played
We're old.
140 matches. So
We're we've been at this too long.
we've been
Are we
at this
doing?
for that's what 14 seasons and about 5 years of Pokemon will do pretty consistently.
God,
Um,
God.
and then yours truly, West Texas Wingles. I played 140 matches. Did cross 250 overall game wins, 253 to be exact, and
Jesus.
hit our 201st regular season game win this season as well. So that was pretty cool. I didn't realize it happened. I knew we did hit our 100th overall match win earlier in the season because I was like, hey, that's pretty sweet. But that's just a longevity thing. But the fact that we've played this much Pokemon, like, that's crazy to me.
That's
And
a lot of
we've done it.
games,
We've done
and
it
we're
with
still
some.
bad.
You're still going at it. We've done it with a different variety of people, but like we've got some cool friendships that have built from just doing this over the years and we get to play competitively. We all have some sort of, I think, competitive background in athletic sports or anything like that, and this scratches that itch, to an extent. I think for some of us, and that's been fun that we've been able to do this with a hobby that I grew up with as a kid, as well as y'all. But I didn't have as many people in person to do this with because of where I grew up,
Yeah,
and so the fact that I get to do this with 8 other people or 7 other people, it's been a blast.
yeah, absolutely, completely agree. I hate you calling me old so many times in that though. That's crazy.
I'm right there with
Uh,
you. I've been right there with you since season 1.
well, well, let's freshen it up. I want to bring us back to this season a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
one of the things that I really liked about this season is how every team kind of has a thing that they can hang their hat on, right? About a thing that went right this season. I can start with me personally. After week 5, going the 5-0 10-0, I was perfectly content if we didn't win another game all season because we had done that. A lot of creative usages. I know you are thrilled to have had the undefeated season, but again, all the creative things done along the way. For people that don't know what happened, every week I was just in this guy's ear, just being like, "Hey, I know
try
you have this weird idea. What if you did it, but even like a little bit dumber?"
yeah.
And the fact that it worked out is just crazy because I could have been accused of sabotage.
Well, it worked, and
Genuinely,
I was
and
willing to do it.
we did a
So
first. We scrimmaged against each other
yeah,
for our week of gameplay. That was new. We've never done that, and that was crazy. So we played each other right before we went and played the series, and a lot of the teams stayed the same.
yeah,
So that was a super fun and interesting thing. I think both of us actually kind of liked, weirdly enough.
yeah.
You know,
It was interesting because we kind of knew what we were doing, but we also said, hey, we're going to scrim, but we can make any change we want after the scrim.
yeah,
And because of that, it's just like, how do we want, like, do I do this
yeah.
because he does this, or is he gonna just take, it was a fun little extra mental game. But a lot of that is because people at home, so they know, we like to work together like throughout the season. Uh just like throw some games at each other and be like, hey, I want to try this. Can we just do like a set of 3 on Showdown? And I think most teams have that practice partner or practice network to try and do that. But historically, we've done that, since season 1, and maybe we should break it apart. I don't know. I wouldn't want to do that. It's
I
been
mean,
too
I
fun.
offer my services to everybody. Nobody
Yeah,
takes them.
yeah,
What do we know?
yeah.
First and second. What are we? Why would we be good as practice partners? What do we
No.
know?
Well, we
Um,
have sabotaged ourselves though.
True.
with coming up with weird sets to be worried about that.
You love doing that.
Yeah, which we calm it down, but we do get to get creative with other people's rosters, which is fun.
Well, and back to the
I
hanging the
sidetracked
hat
it.
thing.
That
Yep,
happens all the time too, by
absolutely.
the way. Uh,
It sure does. Horrible in practice. But Memphis, I think you absolutely take this. You took a roster that was kind of hard to believe in and pull third comfortably. I don't
yeah,
know about comfortably, but like it looks comfortable when you just look at the numbers, right? Uh absolutely stellar. They did a lot of really good, really impressive like minutia in their gameplay. In particular, I was thoroughly impressed at the just sheer amount of times this roster waited out somebody's tailwind. They took out the tailwind setter, made some good switches, used clever protects, stalled out the tailwind. Now it's easy, we go win the game.
yeah.
And they just did that consistently, high level of control, high level stuff. Um, that sounds simple when we talk about it like this, but I dare you to go do it in your games. Just stall out your opponent's tailwind. It's so easy.
Well,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Jumping on that different series, maybe one of my favorite mental game series to play live, and I about ran out of clock doing it. Was when against Windy City Whimsicots. They had Klefki with Rain Dance and a Kyogre that set the rain, and we had a Whimsicott with Sunny Day, and the whole mental game of who had the faster prankster user or the slower prankster user actually to get the weather up was always a fun little game plan, especially because they may or may not had I can't remember if they had Trick Room available, but like there was those different layers going on that you might see on a ladder, but seeing that actually within a draft league best of three with both teams doing that prep makes that so much fun to actually like try to figure that out in real time and see who can come out on top. And I, about burn up my entire clock trying to think those through. But
Yeah.
that shows to the level that these teams are playing. From Memphis, from Windy City, and then like Chapel Hill's experimenting more with Trick Room, which I think is a new wrinkle that they're adding to their game. That's gonna be fun
Well,
to
and
see how that shakes up.
that's, as the only other team to have done it, 10 roster moves is a lot to
Yeah,
just keep cycling through in your head. And it makes it hard as the roster's constantly evolving to sort of figure out how to game plan and things like that. And the fact that they managed to finish top bracket while inverting 10 of their roster slots out of 13
yeah,
is a lot to do. So that's something they can hang their hat on. No matter how this season goes, you flipped over your whole roster and managed to stay afloat while doing it. Super impressive. Queen City, this is the most consistent we have seen them play. Despite it maybe not feeling consistent and the record maybe not looking like it, we showed how close a lot of those losses were. The differential tells that story.
right.
And they have got to be feeling good about just the general improvements that they have made as a team, as a coach. I think this is their strongest draft thus far. Just really good, really impressive stuff. Nashville's got plenty of things to hang their hat on.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
even
they're
think
big
we
and
need to
nasty.
get
That's all
into
I
that.
gotta say.
Yeah, I mean they we called them big and nasty. They showed up. They were big and nasty, and they were really good at being big and nasty. I mean, what more can you ask for?
Yeah.
And for Austin, you walked into this knowing it was an experiment, and it was entirely possible that this blew up entirely in their face. And it didn't. It didn't go great. It didn't really go well. But you picked up a sweep, which is a
Yeah.
hard thing to do in a restricted meta at all. The
Without the
fact that we had
restricted.
so many, yeah, and to do it without your restricted against one of the what is considered the higher echelon of restricteds, uh, genuinely thoroughly impressive, and exhibiting a lot of good forward thinking in that series, and just solid team building. Right, I know
Yeah.
I'm up against Kyogre. I'm just gonna build solidly against Kyogre. I know they love to use it. Um,
Well, and
Picking up
that
the
week
extra game
7
wins.
series
Yeah,
was awesome because not only did they get the big sweep, we find out later they're doing that for the home fans. They got mom in the background watching that one, rooting
that
them
was
on,
funny.
and they're breaking down,
Wow,
"Hey, this is
puff,
what it
wow,
is."
puff.
I'm gonna be like, "It's not gonna work out," and then boom, Ethan and the AAA squad showing up and laying down the wood hammers, man, getting it done. Uh, So
Like
it
Uncle
was a
Hammer's.
fun one, and I think it was a awesome moment for Austin, just so that they could get that big sweep and kind of be like, "Hey, we got one," because
Yeah.
it had been tough up to that point, and so seeing them have a big successful moment, I think for me was awesome to witness, and then finding out after the fact that story, what made that like way better in my opinion.
Yeah. And I mean, we're always kind of clutching at pearls, hoping that everybody gets something on the scoreboard, right? Nobody
Oh
likes
yeah,
looking at that goose egg. And so when that happened, I think everybody other than Windy City was kind of just like a little fist bump, like, yeah, we're all on
yeah.
the board, baby. Um, and so technically they had gotten the 1 point before against Chapel Hill, but seeing them actually take a series and get some real points up there was nice. Um, yeah, I thought it was just a fun season. A lot of people were more creative than normal. I feel like this season. I mean, we've harped on all the ways that we were along the way, and we've talked about some of the creative gameplay things that people have done, but people weren't afraid to try stuff this season. I think a lot more than they have been. Was there any of those that didn't come from our roster? Because we've talked about ourselves enough here.
I firmly believe Cosmic Power Rabska with the fence swapping, guard swapping, would have
Yeah.
worked any other week. Any other week that would have worked. Uh, and but the fact that they're coming up with that strategy, be like, hey, we can do some crazy boost here. They just happen to get unlucky with me doing something stupid too. But like, I like that creativity. We saw an actual a self proc weakness policy this season from AAA with Comfy.
Yeah.
And that was fun. We haven't seen that really happen since Generation 8 when Dynamax was still going on. And so seeing that go away, we thought we might see that strategy go away, but they had a really bulky Zekrom. It ate a Precipice Blades and still was able to get the policy off. So I mean, like, it showed that the team building was there to do that, and that's why they also picked up, I think, a game within that series. But like, that was a lot of fun. I think maybe one of the craziest support sets we might have saw all season was Graphi with what is it? The Flame Orb.
The flame orb trick. No, it didn't even have Super Fang
Super
the
Fang
first
was
time.
the attacking move, but
I don't think it
uh,
had one in the first game that it played. I think it
true. I
Super
guess it
Fang
might
for
have
the
added it
second
later.
appearance.
Yeah.
But I forget exactly what that Grafai had, but the Grafai was a treat every time it got to
Oh,
play.
absolutely.
That is for sure a fact.
Yeah. Well, and we saw how many prankster encores from Graphi, and then like Sableye was a big one too. So like, you had to be very, very
Elamis,
careful. Ilamis did it. I
Chapel Hill
mean,
got a taste of their own medicine, and
Whimsicott did it a couple times.
Chapel Hill did the double non-prankster encores at me in that
They,
Wo Chien sweep
yes,
with
yes,
the
they did. And so
Ninetales
like,
and the jump
we got
up.
some creative
Yeah,
wrinkles going on. The supportive sets and what these supportive sets we saw this season, triple teams, like Big Man the Blastoise was a treat to see. Come out, fake out one turn. I'm gonna sit here for the next 12. What are you gonna do about it? And so like that was a treat to see early on. We didn't see it as much late, but early on in the season it was a lot of fun. Um, trying to think of a few more, but like those were some of them that popped up for me. And oh man, we got to talk about the Electros, the coiling Electros.
the rock helmet as
The
well with the
Yeah,
terrestrialization.
and it was
Big
Rock
rock
Tail,
guy.
Big Rock guy. That was a fun one. I don't remember. I just remember all the coils, and we all got a kick out of that. So
Yep.
uh, there's been some good moments I think for each of the teams throughout the season, and so that's just been fun. I mean, Rhydon got a pretty big setup in week 9 for Windy City. Fortunately, a crit didn't broke it, but like it there was some fun body press stuff going on there too, late in the
Yep.
season. So I think everybody had something creative or off meta that showed up. That was a lot of fun to witness.
Yeah. Completely agree. And I think the all-star ballots kind of reflected that as well.
Yeah,
Seeing the second team all-stars being Muckalola, Iron Hands, that one sounds normal, but Wo-Chin,
yeah,
Ogre Pond Cornerstone, and then the Raging Bolt and the Rillaboom making the cut. But absolute treats. Bramblegast and Donphan and Yanmega and Alchemy and the tier threes all making the cut for tier three all stars. Just says a lot about the unique, creative, weird, niche supports that people were able to actually do stuff with this season. Iron Valiant swapping between a supportive piece and an offensive piece. The Pelipper
Yep.
coming out looking like a support and getting, what was it, like 6 KOs and never fainting in the series
Yeah,
versus AAA.
that was big. A lot of grass types into a Pelipper with 100% accurate hurricanes did not work out, but Pelipper feasted in that one. And but like, what do you want it to do, right?
Yep. That was
So
great. The Murkrow and the Illumise from Toronto. Every support from Nashville going crazy constantly. Uh, you know, I will never shut up about how good I think the tier threes from Memphis were this season.
oh yeah, they were
But
great.
in a restricted meta with a lot of tier twos and tier threes really thriving and eating, people being really creative with that stuff. Huge, massive applause to everybody for busting that out. Flashbang at me. But yeah, I went to the rock dock and got punished.
Uh,
Oh,
I think when you get good tier twos and tier threes in a restricted format that fit your roster, like it's perfect. Because your tier ones and restricted should do a lot of your work, I feel like, damage wise.
yeah.
So if you can actually find tier threes that make that roster really hum and find that groove, like it's looking good for you, man. Uh and seeing all this tier three success, like you had a Barraskewda carry that was awesome to witness, and like the Alolan Mutt got a lot of love in one of the Gamba games, which was kind of crazy, but uh everybody went crazy for it. But like,
Blaziken at the start of the season
yes,
was doing big
Blaziken was a fun one.
numbers.
I think Brambleghast though was still my favorite tier three of the season. I loved
Oh,
what Queen City did.
absolutely. Yeah.
It was my favorite. So
Flygon
uh,
wasn't your favorite? It did
I liked what
so.
you tried to do when it did show up. Uh, it just didn't unfortunately work
for,
out the way you wanted
for the
to, but
people
it
at
still
home,
made the
Flygon
roster.
Flygon did
So
not do great. He
yeah,
did. He is on the final roster though.
he
He did
is.
get second in the regular season by default.
Yeah.
Uh, we did have one creative one that I did that I do want to touch on
Yeah, go
that I
for it.
forgot to mention earlier with the Farigiraf that
Oh
imprisoned
yeah.
two Pokemon and
That
screwed
was
both of their turns over
Chapel Hill
with
had
the
some
Indeedee trying to
rough
trick them.
scenarios.
And the Primarina trying to hyper voice, both getting some very unfortunate news while they tried to click buttons that turn.
Yeah.
That was a very funny one. Baxcalibur being threatened to get cut from the team and then showing up and going crazy multiple times as well.
Yeah.
Another talking point that I really like as I look over these rosters one more time. But yeah, just a really fun, season that wasn't really how we expected things to go. I think we expected restricteds to just show up and dominate and everything to just play around those, and we saw teams come to play Pokemon, and that was really fun and impressive.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about. I mean, people like I think the draft league format in general because it's not like this whole meta game. Like, yes, there's those meta game Pokemon available, but there's only one of them. And so when you
Yeah.
break down a full roster, you have to dig deep to find, hey, what's this role that I can carve out for this team? Or this, like Hydrapple coming in as a tier three. Like you don't see it on the ladder, but it's staring down Maridons and stuff like that later on in the season or any of these other Terapagoses and stuff. And so like it's fun seeing these weird matchups, or even like the couple series we had where everybody's like, we're leaving the big dogs at home. We're just going to stay no restricted, and we're just going to play this tier one through tier three and see who comes out on top. Maybe one of my favorite team builds might have been my let's go all tier two, and then and a couple tier threes. Just see what happens. That's what we did week 9, and uh, I thought it was a
Yo,
fair. I thought it was fair because Chapel Hill had to play the Pokemon they had, and so we're like, hey, we'll play what we haven't used the most yet, and just see what happens. And so,
and
but Draft League
Aki's building
affords
team.
that. So you get to see some fun Pokemon like Pincurchin with Acupressures was kind of fun to see when it did it. So,
That game was hilarious.
I mean, you there's
Zekrom
just
had so many
fun
stats.
niche things that you can unlock within this draft league format that you're not going to see on ladder. And that's why I think if you love Pokemon and you just want to try something for a couple months, like Draft League's where it's at. I'm always gonna advocate for it.
Oh yeah, big
Yeah,
advocates here. But uh, I feel like we've been at this
yeah.
plenty long at this point.
It's been fun
Uh,
though. I've
yeah.
had fun.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sitting here giggling my butt off. But for with respect for the time of the people trying to listen or watch this, if you watched this, good lord, thank you. I don't
Yeah,
know how, but thanks. If you listen to it, we appreciate you and you're awesome too. That makes a little more sense. But uh, yeah, a big shout out to anybody who's stuck with us this season, or God forbid, even longer than that. Y'all are loved and appreciated. We're glad you're here. Hope you've enjoyed. I've been Chris Moriarty Marks the whole time.
yep. And I've been Caleb the Seagull Gully. Thank y'all for listening and watching, and thank you to the guys that play in the league as the other 6 coaches. Couldn't do it without you.
Couldn't do it without you. And with that, we'll catch y'all for some playoff games. Make sure to tune in and check out the channel for the VODs. See you
Absolutely.
there.
See ya.